As we know on this channel, people in Canada, people in the United States, people in the UK, they are becoming enslaved through debt slavery. So their dependence and reliance on the government is going up and up and up with every crisis, with every pandemic that we get into. Central bank digital currency, say goodbye to your freedom. So I think it is obvious right now that a central bank digital currency is coming, and likely during the next crisis that is going to be used to usher in a central bank digital currency. We know what Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum says.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed, definitively a lot of anger.
And we know how intertwined the World Economic Forum is with the Canadian government, for example, with people like Chrystia Freeland being on the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum, Jagmeet Singh, young global leader of the World Economic Forum, and Justin Trudeau is a Klaus favorite. All these people that are influenced heavily by this corrupt organization that influences government, that basically prides itself on crony capitalism and creating more of the crony capitalism which continues to plague society. And now we've got the advancement of a central bank digital currency, and unfortunately there isn't much that we can do about it to prevent this from happening. It's going to happen in all the Western countries. In my opinion, the only way to get away from it, the best way to get away from it, is go to a country which is behind, technologically speaking, when it comes to payments. So that would be a place in maybe Latin America, Asia, you know, wherever it is in the world. There's plenty of these different places, but if you go there, you are going to have less chance of having these authoritarian rules put in place which affect your freedom and your liberty to choose what you want to do with your life. It's pretty obvious to me that now if you go and put a destination in Google Maps, it shows you which is going to be the green route. And when you buy a plane ticket now, it shows you which is going to be the green route. And you have to think, guys, before 2020, did you see anything like that? No, you didn't see anything like that. All this stuff kind of came in behind the scenes in 2020 and nobody noticed. Now, you can say, well, I just can choose whichever ticket I want. I can choose whichever route I want. You can right now, but you can just imagine the authoritarianism that is coming, because we've seen it with the last pandemic, and likely the climate crisis is going to be an excuse to create a new pandemic, which will be the climate crisis in itself. Maybe it'll be one particular climate event that triggers it, or it'll just be the build-up of different events that trigger it for governments in places like Canada to start saying, okay, we have to intervene here. And how we're going to intervene is by restricting your freedom and your liberty using a central bank digital currency and a carbon type scoring system. And this isn't tinfoil hat stuff. I've actually got my Panama hat on right now, not my tinfoil hat. But if you go and you watch this video, I'm going to play this clip to you of the World Economic Forum discussing it openly.
We're developing through technology an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
So you can see that they're discussing these things openly. It's not some sort of conspiracy theory. We don't have to put on our tinfoil hats. This is something that they're working on. It's just not been implemented right now. But you have to take steps to prepare for these things to come implemented into society. And I think the best step that people can take is to move away from countries that are highly corrupted by the World Economic Forum. And there's a lot of countries that are in bed with the World Economic Forum, unfortunately. But the best ones, even the ones that are in bed with the forum, the best ones to go to are going to be the ones that are behind in terms of payment technology and just general technology as well. Because when these sweeping reforms come in, where we've all got our individual carbon scores, in the West at least anyways, it will be linked to all the technology that we have, because technology has just become so ingrained in our society in the West. Whereas you go to places like Mexico, yeah, they could put in a CBDC CBDC. Have you been to Mexico? Because 90% of the transactions there are in cash. So the chances of that type of system actually coming into Mexico, pretty slim in my opinion. It could come. And then you go Central America, you know, Asia, other different places depending on where in Asia, obviously. You've got the same thing. Even some countries in Europe that are just further behind in terms of payment services and whatnot. Those are good places to go. But you know, Trudeau and his cronies, people like Freeland, Klaus, they are literally coming up with this system that is going to be the central bank digital currency, and that is stage one. The Bank of Canada recently announced, and we covered it on this channel through Reuters, that they're doing this public forum for central bank digital currency. And I said in that video, I said the reason that they are doing this is because they want your input, because they want to know what you want from a central bank digital currency so they can manipulate you into taking it. But the reality is, guys, as we know on this channel, people in Canada, people in the United States, people in the UK, they are becoming enslaved through debt slavery. So their dependence and reliance on the government is going up and up and up with every crisis, with every pandemic that we get into. And that's the major problem that I see happening with these countries, is because when you become so dependent on the government, your ability to push back against what they want in a crisis is very, very limited. You just have to think that through logically. It's just the reality of the way the system is set up. The odds are against you in that scenario. And I don't blame people for even taking this kind of stuff on, because yes, you should stand up for your freedom and liberty, but these people are kind of brainwashed. It's like the blind leading the blind. You cannot argue with them. There's no reasoning with them. At the end of the day, I just think it's so important to protect personal freedom and liberty, but I think the reality is we're just not going to be able to preserve it in places like Canada in the West. We've already seen it happen. That's the thing. We saw 2020, we saw 2021. I know a lot of people are probably going to optimistically say in the comments to this video, you know, we're going to push back, we're going to protest like we all did. I did, you did, and everybody else, lots of people on this channel probably. It doesn't matter, because we are the minority. The debt slaves, the herd mentality is the majority, unfortunately, in these countries. So our ability to push back against these things is limited. So our best option is to boycott the whole entire system and move to a different country. And that is what lots of people are doing, actually. Lots of people are leaving Canada. And there are even places and states in the US that you can go to. There are countries all around the world that you can go to where you're just going to have more personal freedom and liberty, and where people, there's more of a consensus view to protect freedom and liberty at all costs. Whereas in Canada, like I said, most people are enslaved. Little do they know that reality is just harder. People have less freedom. I mean, when you think of wealth, and this is how I really think of it to a certain degree, money is never going to make you happy. It's never going to make you happy. Everybody knows this. You know, it's the old cliche that everybody repeats. I don't need to say it. But you know, so money's never going to make you happy, but money will buy you freedom. Because if you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of income, you're earning it through your business, and there's some way that you can make your business more remote or expand into other markets, then that's great. That gives you more freedom to go wherever you want. And that is really the core of what people need to do. They need to position themselves in a way, or start positioning themselves in a way, that they are not married to a country in the sense that they have to stay there if these rules come in. Because we all know what happens when these rules come in. It's just a disaster. And if you don't accept them, if you don't sign up to them, if you don't take them on, then what happens? Your freedoms get restricted. And people say, why wouldn't you want to do it? You get all these credits and everything like that. But what about when you run out of these credits? But what happens when they limit these credits? That's the thing. It's kind of insane how they bring these things in. I'm here in Wales right now, but I was in London last week in England, not London, in Ontario, and they're expanding the ultra low emission zone. So basically you've got this low emission zone, and then you've got this ultra low emission zone, which is in the center, and they're expanding that zone. But before the ultra low emission emission zone, guess what there was? There was a low emission zone. And then came the ultra low emission zone. So slowly more authoritarianism creeping in, because guess what? If your car isn't new enough, doesn't comply with the new requirements for the ultra low emission zone, you can't get into it. You can't drive. And who does that affect? That affects the poor and the middle class who can't afford to buy brand new vehicles, brand new cars. And that's the reality of what is happening in the world right now, is it's like this creeping authoritarianism that is coming in and people just don't notice it. And I feel like the social credit scoring systems that we saw in 2020 and 2021 were just the trial. They were just kind of trialing the idea of how it would work. And I think it was largely successful in the way that, yes, you had the freedom convoy, yes, you had pushback, but ultimately who won? The government won. And it pains me to say that. It frustrates me to say that. I don't want to say that. It fills me with anger to say something like that, that the governments, they're becoming like the kings and queens of the past, these just authoritarian leaders, people like Trudeau. They think they are the monarch. They think we should all hail the leader. And you know, whoever we get in charge in the future, not much is going to change, because of the crony capitalism, the people pulling the strings in the background are still there. You vote in entire parties, you don't just vote in one person. So that's the thing to remember. So I think it's going to be really interesting going forward, moving forward. You know, it's slightly controversial topic, but I'm not afraid to talk about this stuff. And I think this stuff is not tinfoil hat. I think this stuff is just the reality of what's going on and what people are going to need to accept if they choose to live in places like Wales, places like England, places like the UK, places where people are enslaved by debt and they are basically just dependent on the government. The dependence on the government that people have is just increasing and increasing and increasing. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might also like this video here. Currently just hiking along the Pembrokeshire coastline. Beautiful beach where I am right now and beautiful coastline around me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you did in the chat. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.